You did a good job. You helped me pay attention. So I wouldn't go to sleep.
We may be getting a cast off this week, so that'll change things up.
There's that, right.
See.
Where did you have to go? Burlington or somewhere to get it? Yeah. We don't have any.
Oh gosh. I'll shut up.
Testing, okay. Good morning. Welcome everyone to the 10:30 Town Hall, the third and final Town Hall for the beginning phase of the Church Hall. I am Nathan Fox. I am president of the building committee. I got several members of the committee here in the seats. We'll do our best to try answering any questions, but please remember, this is just about the location and function of the Church Hall, not whether or not we're going to build a Church Hall. For those of you who do not know, your three location options are: option one, to utilize our existing All Saints Parish campus, which is where we're sitting here, to build a new hall, rectory, and way down the road, future school project. It's not, when I say way down the road, I'm not talking about 5, 10, 15 years. We're talking 25, 50, 100 years in the future. Option two, utilizing our existing school and building for a new church hall and rectory in close proximity. Or option three, acquiring land on the outside of the city limits and building a whole new Catholic campus out there. So with that being said, I'm going to open up the floor to you, the parishioners. This Mass is going to be slightly different than the 4:30 and 8:30 in that we're live streaming it to the members who cannot attend. So instead of staying in your seat for your comments, if you would, please come up and address it into the mic, state your name and your comments and questions so we can get on the live stream and Dave Schmidt can take notes. Okay, so no comments or questions. Going once, going twice. Okay, sold. So that was an easy, I guess, town hall. So what we'll do is a vote. This is one of the things that's required. All those in favor of building the church hall here at the All Saints campus, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 29. All those in favor of building a church and church hall out at the St. Vincent's campus, please raise your hand. 1, 2. 2 for option 2. And all in favor of building on a new campus outside of city limits, please raise your hand. And that's a 0. Okay, did anyone have any new functions that you were wanting, or were the functions in the flyer okay with everyone, or any comments or questions or concerns about the function of the facility? It was in the bulletin 2 weeks ago. Yeah, you want to bring one up? Thank you. Yeah, there should be a bunch back there. Here you go, Karen. Yes, ma'am. Just to go over the flyer for those who haven't seen it, I've already gone over the options, but the goal is to build a parish hall that will strengthen our spiritual community. The objectives of this hall space is to function for church gatherings, community receptions, faith formation, and children's youth worship, office space needed for our parish, renovation of the rectory for longevity, accessibility for the entirety of the parish community, and community social gatherings. So how you can help is discussing that here at the town hall, and then the 3 options that we talked about at the very beginning. So those would be the generic functions. Of course, there could be more, there could be less. We are thinking as a committee that this would include all the Catholic organizations within the church would also be utilizing this space for their use, like the funeral dinners would use this for their space for funerals. We're in talks with the Knights of Columbus about them possibly utilizing this space, Ladies of Charity, so forth. So any of the Catholic entities within the church would also be welcome to use this space. So any functions, forms, or thoughts about the church hall and how you as a parish would like to use it? Yes, ma'am. Youth groups, yes, youth groups are part of that. That was the third one on there, was youth groups and youth education for the function. So it would include some form of classroom type environment for youth groups and for, I'm drawing a blank on the word, the family vocations, where the families get together and you do your Bible studies and stuff. Dr. Schleier. So we don't have the finalized engineering study back, but there is a preliminary that the church facility we're sitting in right now is in good shape. It should last, what was it, like 25, 50 years or whatever the engineering study request was. I can't remember, like the longevity of the church. Financially, it would not cost a lot to maintain this facility that we're sitting in, was what the engineering study went through. The rectory had one done, but there was some more detail to it, and I'm not going to go into it because I haven't seen the finalized report yet before I understand the full cost under analysis of the rectory. Oh, I haven't seen it yet. That's my fault then. I've been checking the email. I guess I didn't see the.
Structurally sound. They discussed it at parish council. It was structurally sound.
Okay, so the rectory was structurally sound. So the rectory and the church are both structurally sound. They need work, but like Father said, what building their age doesn't need some sort of work? So, yes, Mr. Wachowski. There was an estimate that we have talked about in the building hall committee, but inevitably that is not our decision. That would be on the architect and engineer based on the size of land that they choose on whatever campus site we pick and what functions and form we give them. They'll take analysis as an engineer of our current functions and our current population of the church, add some percentage to it, and figure out what kind of space is needed. I mean, we can put a guesstimate to the number the best we can as a committee or as a parish, but inevitably that's going to be an architectural engineering requirement that they're going to pick based off land, size of the building, and what estimates they see by seeing the population of the church and activities. Mr. Fry. I do have a list of concerns that were discussed at the 4:30 Mass. Some of those concerns have been kind of, if I would, put to bed by Father, but the list of concerns from the 4:30 Mass, first one was they couldn't support tearing down this historical church, which is quite understandable, but we never said we were going to tear down the church. That just had to be an option based on if we were going to build in another location. It would only be feasible not at some point down the road that the entire campus would be unified. That's just kind of common sense. No one really wanted to tear down this church, and no one was suggesting we tear down the church. Bob Krause said, take a look at what we had last year. We had more funerals than baptisms. People leave the church, go to the cars, and they just leave. They don't go, they don't participate after Mass. He said it would be more important to focus on the school than a hall, which is an understandable statement, but the hall's not in question whether we're going to build a hall or not. We're going to build a hall, and this does not affect the school in any way, shape, or form. The hall and the school are completely separate funding, so please don't think that the hall is taking money from the school or the school is taking money from the hall. They're complete separate entities, complete separate funding. They are not the same, and it won't be taken away from one to give to the other. Peggy Fry stated, we need to bring more youth and activities to our church to rebuild the church, and that's the whole purpose of the hall, not just youth, but families as in general, parishioners, community members. Without a proper gathering, a social space for the community, it's really hard to bring community together to gather and be one. So that's the whole purpose of a hall, is to give us as a parish a gathering space to have those that kind of activities and build some of that community rapport. Greg Sandage talked about building a hall at a central location point where everything can be unified, hall, church, and education. He's been through many church closings and everything else, and it's really good to consolidate in a single location, which his vote was for this location. There's a lot of discussion about the school, once again, thinking that the money was going to take away from the school, which it is not. Jackie Ebling, we have a beautiful church. We've lost too many members, and there's too many distractions today as a society, and that we as a parish need to do a better job in bringing our children back into the church and making us, the community, grow and be better by bringing our youth back. And then Susie Krause wanted to know what Trevor and the youth groups have been doing and why they're being more done to bring the youth back into the church. And that was the comments from 4:30 for the bulk of it. The 8:30 last week, do we have a current or recent update on the condition of the church, which we just talked about, the engineering assessment? Margaret Cook, we need to build a hall next to the church. This is the most beautiful church in the area. Jennifer Sellers, is there a requirement as to where the rectory is located? And we touched on that at 8:30. There is no physical requirement where the church's rectory is located. It's really up to the parish and the pastor at the time of the church on where, if he wants to be co-located with the church or somewhere else within the town. So there is no requirements for where the rectory is located. Is our rectory foundation good? So based on the engineering assessment, yeah, the rectory foundation should be good and the structure should be sound. Wells Carey School Building is very close and could easily serve future needs for the school system and or church hall. It has a lot of space, and that is something we have talked about, and we need to research that. That facility is privately owned now, so we're not sure about that facility. No, that's not on us to make that decision. That's on the engineer and architect. For the church hall, that's still not up for debate. Father answered that last week. That's on the architect and engineer. We as a committee and as a parish are not picking the final location, even if it's here, there, or there. An architect will look at every property that's currently owned by the church, and they will make an engineering assessment of the soil, the land composition, what can hold the weight, it would be financially feasible to build the facility at. So it's going to be based on architectural and engineering requirements of the building. No, we can't pick it till we're finished with this process. Yes, a lot of people have said that, but once again, we're not picking an exact location until the engineer and architect have looked at the facility. We cannot, I'm not a strong enough structural engineer, and I'm willing to bet there's not a single person in here besides maybe one that I can think of who is a strong enough engineer or construction person that can make the decision on soil compositions, bedrock, and everything else for the weight and requirements of this building. Before you get there, yes, sir, because his hand has been up for a little bit now. That is variant depending on the function that we want the church hall to be. So it depends if you just want a gathering space, a lot less. But if you also want it to be a rectory, if you want it to have classrooms, if you want it to have more function, it's going to require more space. So it depends. Yes, sir. Depending. There is some research that has been done, and if we did a multi-story building, there might be, but once again, that goes back to engineering and architectural assessments of the land can withhold that kind of weight. Yes, sir. There used to be a high school across the street, yeah. We're in communication with the Knights of Columbus to decide whether they're interested in using and utilizing that facility if it's built. Correct. Correct. The Knights of Columbus legally do not own that building. There is a corporation that owns that building that is then renting that facility out to the Knights of Columbus due to some legality issues. But yes, that building is wholly owned by members of the Knights of Columbus. Yes.
Sounds to me like the decision about the location is going to be made by the engineering and architect in spite of voting.
No. So the vote is not about the exact location. It's about the campus. The All Saints area, St. Vincent's area, or a whole new campus. The exact location on that campus will be made by an engineer and architect. Let me get to her then you, okay?
Just like you hire an architect to build your house, then we'd have another meeting with the architect, and he'd take in your input and your design.
Could you point out the perimeter of this part of the campus where, I mean, it's the church, the rectory?
So the current property is owned by All Saints. Correct me if I'm incorrect, Father. For this campus, the All Saints is the site we're sitting on now with the sanctuary and the main church, the rectory, and the two lots across the street, which is the paved parking lot and the gravel parking lot, which used to be St. Peter's High School. Those are the current only properties owned by All Saints here. Yes, there used to be one down that way, but it's not anymore. Not anymore, we do not. We don't own any other properties outside those 4 locations here on this facility anymore. Miss Lemon had her hand up first.
Three options. What three options you say that the architecture would choose? You say there's 3 options of where it could be.
So the 3 options are for us, the parishioners, to pick, which is here on All Saints, out at St. Vincent's, or a whole new facility on a whole new plot of land we need to purchase. When it comes to the architect here, it would either be current side of the rectory, tearing that down, building a new rectory and new church hall, all like in a one facility type situation, over at the St. Peter's School site over there, or in this parking lot. That's the only properties that we have, unless we can somehow acquire more property between now and construction, which is still also a plausible or possibility.
People can't hear what the question is.
I know.
Tell them to raise your hand.
Paul Wachowski was next. Hang on, he's going to bring a mic to you to make it easier so the stream can actually hear us. Yes, we have. The question is, has there been any look at other parishes and facilities? And actually, that was our very first due out as a building committee. We've gone around to many churches and church halls in the tri-state area, took pictures, wrote down dimensions, and used as models. The newest built one that we attended was Carthage, and I think the oldest one was the one in Quincy, which was St. Rose. So we've seen all the way from giant in Quincy to nice and humble in Carthage. I can hear you. Okay.
The Wells Carey building, the laundromat facility, the old convent. It blows my mind that we didn't save that convent for future use for a facility. Church Hall has been in the books for a long, long time to get built on this property. 40 years ago, when we tore down 2 other churches in our community that had church halls in the basements, I didn't think St. Peter's would make it through that, and it did. But it ripped the parish, the communities apart in this Catholic community, and some of that has still not healed yet. And we all sitting here, if we are honest to ourselves, we can admit we know that being fact. There's people that we lost to St. Mary's. There's people we've lost to the church of St. Mary's in Hamilton, the church of Montrose, and stuff like that. I do not think tearing this structure down, this parish community can handle another thing like that again. Okay, that's my opinion. I am sorry that I'm not more involved in the church than what apparently we all need to be. But when the convent was shut down, why did we not save that and that property and build a church hall? Those were people before all of us got involved, okay, that made those decisions. You know, the Wells Carey building is for sale, you know, but there's a ton of work there. Working for the school district, I know some of the stories of that facility. It's going to cost a lot to do that.
It was actually just recently sold.
It was?
Yeah, a private investor bought it.
Okay.
We don't know. We were going to try acquire.
Is that the Canadian people?
Yes.
They're not doing anything with it.
No.
I'm sure it's still attainable if that's what we need. That was what my question was, is do we need that big a space?
That was.
But we don't know what we need because
Yeah.
we don't know what we want it to be yet. So I think we're still early in discussion of what are we looking for, you know?
We will have more meetings like this in order to get the hall built.
Yes. So.
This is just the first of a series of meetings.
I understand the rectory needs some attention. You guys are crammed for space over there. We need a youth minister. We need that program to get the youth back to the church. It was pretty disheartening to sit here and see you trying to hand out a children's bulletin today and not a single child come up to get one. You know, so we're losing our youth. We don't have the new blood coming up and stuff like that. I attended mass over in Indianapolis last weekend, in the oldest church that is in Indianapolis, and they started just like Sarah did and announced and welcomed where heritage and hope come together. It was very moving for me for what we're going through right now. This is just a tough one for me because this building, and I know it's not the church. The church is its people, but this building means a lot to a lot of us, and I just can't see it gone ever.
Don't think anybody here is suggesting.
But my concern was when this was brought to my dear friend, that 2 of the options was including tearing down the church. That should have never been one of the options. With this process, the National Register, check, that doesn't say it's still. The church owns this structure. They can tear it down. No, it is not. Anything that's on the National Register can be torn down. That is wrong. If anybody thinks that's going to save this building, it's not. The Catholic Church owns this. They can tear it down. It's not. Anyway, I didn't mean to get on my soapbox.
Is it on now? It is. Yeah. I just my thoughts about if we're going to build a parish hall, it needs to be connected to this facility, this church. If we don't do that, people are going to go out the door and go home. it's going to really stymie our ability to have community. I think that's really what we need and people want. So if there's a way for us to connect a church hall to our church now, it would be ideal. Whether you tore down the rectory next door and build it right there, or my father even asked about whether we could close the street in front of the church, as a possibility. I don't think those questions have been answered totally. Could you close the alley, Are the houses over there, could we buy some of those houses and go that way? I think we have to really explore that, but I think most people have a dear place in our hearts for this church. That I think the agony we went through with tearing down the other two churches was really tough. And I wasn't from here originally, but it still bothers me when I go by those vacant lots, But here we are today. We need to build a community so we can't have little children running up the aisle, to get a bulletin. I think that's important too. So.
I said before, part of the reason why I have the options is that people are going to challenge me on building a hall. And I have to be able to defend. And what I've heard from people is you want this church to stay here. That's important information for me to hear and be able to repeat. So I apologize if I cause distress to anybody by talking about it. I mean, I'll be honest with you. To some degree, questions on those options might even straw me arguments so that I can sit there and wipe out an argument so I don't have to have the design, have the bishop tell me 6 months from now, oh, you didn't consider this option. You now have to go back and draw up an option and give the people a choice. What I'm trying to do is give you the choice. Now, I admit, I could have told you you all were going to vote for keeping this church. That's to me obvious, but I needed you all to say that. It is recorded in the minutes of this meeting that you all were overwhelmingly in favor of keeping this facility, both at this meeting and the
Previous.
third meeting last week. And that's important information for me to take to the architect. I'm going to say the people overwhelmingly are in love with St. Peter. And those who really think seriously about, I've spent over $100,000 of church money on this building since I've come here. Do you think I would be spending $100,000 if I was going to tear this building down? I don't even take my full paycheck.
We'll get to two more questions. One thing I do want to address based on some previous comments and questions. So as we go forward in this process of getting a church hall, there will be several more town hall meetings between each phase. So the next phase after this is getting this rudimentary where and what the facility is going to look like. Not physically look like, but what is it going to do? And then we will approach an architect firm / engineering firm, get them hired on, we'll give them that rudimentary list. They'll design something with its form and function, and then the next phase will start where we have more town halls with that list and with those possible drawings, and it won't just be a drawing, it will be several drawings, several locations within that campus, and its size, dimensions, and I don't know how many options, but there will be several options they will present to us that we as a parish will vote on depending on what the architect drew up. So this isn't the last meeting we're going to have over this subject. So like Father said, overwhelmingly amongst all the town hall meetings and last year's survey that everyone did, it will be this campus. It will be the current All Saints campus for this church hall. So option 2 and 3 are dead. Don't even think about those anymore. There's only one option, and it is here. It will be here at the location of All Saints. Once we get to the second phase, which is getting an engineering firm architect on board, then we'll find out a more fine-tuned location where we as a parishioners will vote on based on several different drawings and options and functions that the architect and engineering firm provide us. So, and then once that's done, before construction even starts, there'll be a final town hall to go over it one more time. This is the final plans everyone voted on. This is it. This is your last chance to change it. So there's a total of 3 phases, 3 sets of town halls that are going to happen that will require your input. And no, the diocese does not have final say in any of that before anyone asks that question. It is on us, the parish, on what this does and what it does. All the diocese is going to do is ask us, did we look at options? That's all they're going to ask. They're not going to dictate anything. So go ahead with your questions.
I appreciate what you just said. Thank you. I would say that a lot of this appears to be, unfortunately to me, like stream of consciousness. All of a sudden now, when I read the options last week, it seemed like there were only 3 options. There was not I sent, and I don't know if you read my letter that I sent to you.
I have it.
Thank you. For me, and it seems like 29 people here at this meeting, and apparently the remainder of the other meetings, people, I assume, voted the same way, that they support this. And now you've come to the conclusion, which I would never have predicted from last week, that we've now eliminated options 2 and 3. That's very interesting to me, honestly, but I'm glad to hear that. What I'd had in my letter, and I would say to Father, and the questions Father has asked, what do you want? How much space? How many people? I can't answer any of those questions because I have no data. I'm not a native. I don't know about the history, all the church. I know there were multiple churches, 3 churches, 2 torn down. There were issues, serious issues in the community. And it appears to a lot of people, I'm assuming, that are natives here, that the decisions, even though they had stated what they wanted, the decisions were made through the diocese. What was done here was overruled by the diocese. And I suspect that there are people that are concerned about a similar action. So all I'm saying is I appreciate all your hard work, the trips you've taken, the places you've seen. But before, I think most of us, and I'll speak for myself for sure, I need to see data. What was our parish census once upon a time? How many kids were in the school? What's our finances? How much money is available for the parish hall? What do you need to raise? What are the conflicts in raising money? The diocesan appeal, is that going to be, in the future, is that going to have conflicts with raising money for the parish hall? These things I don't know. But numbers. What have you seen in other parishes? That would be helpful. What's seen in Carthage? They built that hall. How many people attend? How often do they attend? I mean, these information, more data before answers can be given, and that'll facilitate making the best possible decisions and the choices for the entire parish. Thank you.
Thank you. You're right, there needs to be more data, but before we can, of course, get more data, we need to receive more data. I will work on getting some numbers census-wise for current parishioners versus in the past and get that out. One thing I do want to put forward too is if you're not wanting to speak here or you have more thoughts than we have time here for, you're also please write a letter to the church, put it in an envelope, and drop it off at the parish hall. And we as a committee will still receive that and be able to read it and add it to the parish hall / town hall meetings. Just list it, parish hall committee and town hall meetings.
Can anybody attend the building committee meeting?
Yes, the building committee is always public. I reserve 5 to 10 minutes at the end of every meeting for the public to come in and have comments. Moving forward to, these are our meetings for this month. We've only had we started getting together in March, so we haven't had a whole lot of meetings. We've just kind of been gathering thoughts and getting this data put together that we have today.
Is there a set date and time?
It's the 2nd and 4th Sunday of the month after 10:30 Mass in the rectory. We will also be posting every meeting minutes in the bulletin the following week. So if you're curious and you weren't able to attend, you want to see what was discussed, it will be in the church bulletin the following week.
And just to go off what Dr. Carapresso said, because of what happened in the past with the other 2 buildings and a lot of people felt that that was overridden by the diocese. No matter what we said here, please, in this day and age especially, be very transparent in what we do as we move forward.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Bone? No, ma'am. These are our 2 meetings for this month. It gives me time to get some of this data compiled for the beginning of July. Yes, Ms. Littman. Oh, God, that cord's going to kill me.
I just want to make a statement. I don't know how many people here have had relatives that helped build this church, but my great-grandfather did. And it's very dear to my heart. If you'd like to see his name, just go back and look at both the restrooms. Okay?
Yes, Ms. Lemon.
I have a question. It might be too soon to ask this, but is there a limit on the amount of money that is allotted for this? And is there going to be a fundraiser?
There will be some sort of fundraiser. Right now, cash value, we have $500,000 specifically set aside for this that was donated over 20 plus years specifically for a church hall. Money limit, we have discussed some in the building committee, but it's not really a set number. It's going to be based off what you as a parish want for the function, so then we can move forward with an architect firm who can adjust based on form and function what the cost will be. So before I even want to put a dollar amount out there, I want to get the engineering and architectural assessments returned of the new facility with blueprints and cost to present to you, the parish. And that will be based off you, the parish's requirements and needs. So when it comes to the property, we know it's going to be this property that we currently own. If we need to purchase more, that might be a situation, but that would be a discussion with Father and the architect. Hey, you don't have enough property here for what you need. So then we would have to look at purchasing more property. But if we have enough land here for what we need, then it will be on the architect and engineering firm to decide, okay, if we build here, here's the 3 options over there, this is what it can do. If we build here, this is what it can do and what it's going to cost. If we build there, this is what it can do and what it can cost. It very well could be. I don't know. Once again, it depends on how the architect designs the facility. It could be 2, 3, 1 story. It just depends on how they design it and the cost to build that facility. There is an easement with the alley, but that's all dependent on if we want to use the alleyway. You would have to talk to the powers that be and request permission to use it. That's not even anything we're looking at yet. That's way down the road. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think we might be better off just maybe coming up with a plan for a spot here and a plan at another place and narrow it down that way. It might be a lot easier than giving too many options. 2, you're not going to make everybody happy. It ain't going to happen. 3, it's not the church's fault. And if people decide that they want to leave the church, like they did years ago, then they're going to church for all the wrong reasons. That's my personal feeling on it. As far as trying to get more people into the church, that's not the church's fault. That comes from individual families. I got 4 children of my own. They came to church every Sunday. None of them come now. I try. That's not the church's fault. That comes from each individual person's decision. I don't think there's one family in this church that doesn't have a child that used to attend that don't attend now. So to be blaming that on anybody in the church is wrong. But I think to narrow it down just to a spot here next to the church and maybe one other place, probably be the best bet. Because you're not going to make everybody happy. They decide they're going to leave, they're going to leave. Just thought.
I had heard that there's about $500,000 in a hall fund right now. Is that true?
Yes, that, like I stated earlier, we do have $500,000 in cash for a hall fund that's been donated over 20 plus years.
Sure. And then I had another question, and Father, this might be something you need to answer for me. I heard you mention we would need space in a church hall for children's worship. Does that mean we would have them go to a different service over there, the children, and not actually be in the church with us? Is that what you meant by that, or did I misunderstand?
We have done in the past, when I came here, they were doing children liturgy in the day chapel. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I have been to newer Catholic churches, and they have a separate wing that the kids go there. They're not even part of the liturgy that's going on in the church, and I don't personally like that. When I was an altar boy at this church, there was a kid wailing and wailing and wailing in the back of the church. And those of you that remember Father Diamond, some of us liked him, some of us didn't. I thought he was pretty all right. He stopped in the middle of his homily one day and he said, "Isn't that beautiful music? God gave that kid lungs that he can wail like that." And you could tell some people were getting disturbed in the congregation by it and stuff like that. But I thought Father put it very eloquently, and I think it's important that those little kids come to Mass with their families. Just my opinion.
That's up to pretty much what parents want to do. I mean, I've never discouraged parents from bringing their kids to church. I don't care. It doesn't bother me if a kid cries or not during Mass. I've never had a problem with that. But I also, with parents who felt strong enough about wanting to do a children's liturgy of the Word, as long as they follow the liturgical norms of the church, I haven't had a problem with that either. I think when I first came here, we were letting kids out there. Part of the problem with that, the more concern is trying to meet our safe environment requirements. And there's all sorts of other headaches that go along with doing that besides the fact that liturgy, that's, to me, not a question for, just setting the hall. I'm not going to build a hall in order to do that. I already got space to do that. We don't do it because we don't have the parents that are willing to do the work that would need to be done. I don't know if we even have these kids that go out there like we used to. The kids haven't come back since COVID. We've lost a lot of kids that have not come back to church since COVID. So, I'm not sure what we're going to do in the future in that regard.
Okay, since we have decided on this building, we have two options: either tear down the rectory or build it across the street at where the church used to be, the St. Peter's Church.
Or the
right?
concrete. There's a lot of different options there, and
Okay,
it could be
you mean
different
the parking
story.
lot?
It could. It depends on what the engineer,
The size, what we need.
what we need, cost effectiveness for leveling the land, getting the land prepped for footers, weight.
Well, and
Just
if we have enough room, tearing down the rectory, I don't know
Correct.
if we'd have enough room there. I'm not sure, but those are our options right now.
just so people understand my background and why I'm hesitant to give an exact location. I was in the Army for 11 years as a construction engineer, so I do understand construction, concrete footers and pouring, and until soil assessments are done and all kinds of stuff's done on the land to show its capabilities for weight bearing and work, you cannot narrow down a specific location until the proper soil comps have been done and analyzed. So that's why I'm saying an engineer and architect firm have to do it, because they have to come and test all locations to figure out what can hold the weight and what can facilitate what we need. Because I can say I want to put a 4-story building over there, and then as soon as we build it, just like you've seen in the past, someone who didn't get a proper assessment done of the soil, the building starts to lean or starts to sink because they didn't do proper soil analysis and find out that the soil cannot handle the weight of that structure. So there is a lot of detail that needs to be put in before we can narrow down an exact location. That has to be done by the appropriately educated people. And then you, Karen.
I have a couple other comments about the committee. I think the committee has tried to incorporate what they think the parish really wants. I think building this hall is building it for the future, beyond us, and so we can regrow what we used to have as far as numbers are concerned. But the Knights of Columbus were approached. Do they want to be involved with the hall? Do you want it for wedding receptions? Do you want it for 250 people, 150 people? Do you want it for 300 people? I think, again, that's what Father's trying to ask us is what do you want it for? You want it for, funeral dinners? Do you want it for educational purposes, for like some type of Bible study, on a Wednesday night, something like that? Do you want it to house the priest? Do you want his home to be in that rectory? So I think those are the kind of questions we still don't have answers to yet, right? More input is needed. Whether the location, maybe we can acquire more property if we need to, if we want a larger size, but we don't know yet.
I just have one more question. That property across the street where the gravel is, how long did that school stand there as a foundation? Did it hold up then?
Correct, it held up then, but as soon as you tear down the structure, that something's already been built on, the soil composition changes drastically. You don't know if it can handle a new construction based on how they destroyed the building or tore it down. If they threw all the garbage in there and then put soil on top of it and compacted it down, it can't hold weight after that point. It's going to create a sinkhole the moment you put weight on it, because all that garbage that's inside there that's fill will start to break down. So there is a lot of composition that has to be analyzed there. So just because it held a building once doesn't mean it can do it again. Yep, and I bet if they did it anything like old teardowns, they dug a giant hole and shoved everything in and then put soil on top, which means it no longer can hold weight, without digging it all back out and completely backfilling it with proper material and aggregate. And I know it's too much engineering for a lot of people, but I know there's a couple people here who know what I'm talking about and know how much money that would cost if that's the case.
But you don't know if that's what they did.
I don't know, but until we get an assessment done by an engineering firm, we don't know anything about any facility here and its capability of holding weight. Ms. Hickey, do you?
Well, the other thing is, even if you would want the new building to be out here, all the jarring and digging and carrying on you have to do to build a building might be very detrimental to this building. It could fall down. You get one backhoe going out here hammering around and carrying on, the whole wall on this side might fall down. You really have to be very careful about all of those things.
Correct, but that's once again an architect or engineer will do that kind of assessment, what kind of equipment would be there and how that would affect in close proximity here. All those kind of things like vibration analysts and stuff will all be done by those engineering firms. You have to remember, an engineering firm isn't just drawings, there are surveys, there's soil compositions, there's going to be equipment analysis, and what is in the general proximity and how that would affect it. There's a lot of detail that goes in there that most people here are not qualified, if not none of us are qualified to make that decision. That's why there's entire firms with specialty people that work on each part of that project.
And what if none of these places passed inspection?
Then we bring it to the parish, we let you guys know, and we move forward from there, and Father has a decision to make whether we need to purchase more property here that would facilitate that or what. Or we have more town halls to discuss that situation. But once again, at this point we're getting the hypotheticals, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but we don't need to talk about hypotheticals. We just need to talk about the function of what this facility is going to be. What do you as a parish want it to do? We'll address hypotheticals as they come up, if they come up. When we'll approach you, the parish, as situations arise or problems arise, if we have problems, and then we'll make a decision together as a parish.
You know, hypothetically, you can build anything anywhere. It's just a question of what it's going to cost. My dad is a construction engineer. He built bridge foundations, and he on the other side of the river, and he used to often lie because some politician insisted that the bridge had to go over so-and-so's land versus some other piece of land. And he would say, we could have built it for a tenth of the cost if we built it over
My suggestion, Nathan, is maybe you ought to get the architecture in to check all the property first before we make any more decisions, because nobody knows where it's going to be unless they decide on their own too. So how are we going to make a decision of what we want if the architects are going to decide for themselves?
We need to make decisions on what functionality we want the building to do. Do we want to have retreats there? Do we want to have CCD classes there?
Right.
Do we want to have wedding receptions?
Right.
Do we want to have donuts after mass? Those are the decisions the architect's going to want to know before he starts drawing on drawings. And yes, they'll look at all the different locations.
Well, I think there's a lot of things we could have in that parish hall without any question. You know, we could decide on all those options, right, what everybody's given you. I think the architecture needs to find out what property can be used before we decide how big a place we can have or where it's going to be.
Nathan, you mentioned the survey, and I remember filling it out. Do you still have those results, or do we need to do another survey?
We do still have the results and everything compiled. That's what we used when we formed the committee to initially design those 5 initial functions. Were based off the 5 most prominent requirements from that survey.
Because I would have thought that survey would have told us what the parish wants, what our needs were.
Correct, but being a year-old survey, that's why I compiled it. We took the top 5 functions, which some of the other functions were sub-functions underneath those top 5, compiled it into these 5, and then we're representing to you as a parish more as an affirmation of, is this what you want? And if it's not, before we, go ahead, Father. Correct, before we turn it over to the architect, so the architect has a rough idea of what we want, and then he or she can provide us a drawing of our whimsical fantasies, and then we can look at it as a parish, like, yeah, no, that's not a good idea, or yeah, that's a great idea, and then we can narrow that down more or expand it more once we get physical drawings. And I promise you, I know what people are thinking. Why don't we just narrow down a spot first? That's not how construction works. You give the architect, you have all this land, this is what I want it to do, and he's going to draw up 4 drawings or 3 drawings for over here, 4 or 5 for over there, or 4 or 5 for over here, and then we as a committee will look at them, bring them to you as a parish, and then you as a parish will vote on them. Now there will probably be a few that will instantly just be a no the second we receive it due to cost. We're going to look at something, if he gives us one that says $10 million, we're like, yeah, no, we're not even going to take it to the parish. That's ridiculous. So yes, there will be some transparency that we as a committee will do some sanity checks on a few of them and just throw them out if they cost way too much money. But we will provide you with all that information. We as a committee will be extremely transparent. But before we can even get to narrowing down all this, we have to have what does it do, and generally where are we going to build it. So now we know, after that initial vote at the very beginning, where generally we're going to build it. Here, All Saints Parish campus. When I say campus, I mean everything that's owned by the All Saints Church here in this location. And then what do we want to do? Like your question, the 5 from the survey, which included some subcategories, which on the survey were separate, but they're really a sub-function, like CCD and family vocation stuff would also include children's liturgy or children's education, which you would consider like Bible study and children's Sunday school. So all those kind of wrap into like the family education piece. So that's where those 5 did come from, which was the survey. And this is more of us affirming that you as a parish want these as a general function for this facility before we approach. So we approach the architect, which is our next step, compiling all these notes with these functions, and then they will provide us with drawings and possibilities that then new town hall meetings will be scheduled to address you, the parish, to vote on and decide on. Now, that we can add more or take from now. We can also do it once we get the drawings from the architect. That's all planned phases.
Do you think there'll be another survey now that that one's a year old and now that the 3 town hall meetings have been held?
I imagine once the next phase starts and we get an architect firm hired and they get make statement of work, which is just a paperwork side of what this building's going to be, what they're going to do and provide, we would probably put out another survey. Hey, this is what the architect's looking at. This is what it's going to do. This is the total square footage, so forth, so on. Do you want this? If not, fill in the blank what you would rather have type survey. Less multiple choice, more this is it. What do you think?
Thank you.
Town hall meeting, survey are substitutes for each other. It's kind of silly to do both. So either we'll have a town hall meeting or we can do a survey.
Sorry, Dave. Okay.
But we're going to we will be seeking input. So what I said, to me, it's town hall meetings a substitute for a survey.
Okay, you
He's taking notes, I'm making notes, you know.
And Mark Heston, who's watching right now on the camera, is taking notes as well.
Okay, you guys, you people have been talking about what it looks like. I would really like to have a drive up, because that's one of the problems with this church. It's so far, we don't have handicap parking. When we'd have the Fino dinners at the Knights of Columbus, people would have a hard time getting into the building. So what it looks like, I would like to have a drive up to not maybe, but close to the door, not so far.
That's a very good comment. So I'm writing down handicap accessibility and approachability from a road access. If there's any more comments or questions, going once, going twice, sold. Thank you everyone for attending. This is our final town hall. We will compile the notes, and in July you'll see our first meeting. It will be the second Sunday of July after 10:30 Mass in the rectory. And that'll be the first meeting we have back as a building committee after these. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your weekend.